Hello there! Welcome back to a brand new season of Curihistory. Our focus is still on curious people, events and developments, so let's not waste any more time and introduce our first topic for season 2. In 1859, a war broke out between the United States of America and the United Kingdom. These two superpowers had last met in the War of 1812, but tensions were still brewing as the UK controlled America's northern neighbor, Canada. Perhaps then it was just a matter of time before they would come to blows again, but few would have expected the cause of this war. As the name says, the root of this war was none other than one hungry pig eating tubers. As always, let's start with a bit of backstory. The United States were still a very young nation in the mid-19th century. While the American Revolutionary War had gained this republic its independence, Britain was still close through their dominion over Canada. And unlike the Americans, the Canadians were mostly content with British rule, even the Quebecois. These descendants of French settlers were approached both by the US and the French government during the war, but still stood with their colony. In the end, the US of course won the conflict, its independence and the so-called Northwest Territory, so parts of Canada that lay between the Ohio River and the Great Lakes, an area that today forms 6 states within the United States. This territorial loss was still in fresh memory when the War of 1812 broke out. While it was the US that declared war, they saw it as a reaction to continued hostile acts by the British government, including being harassed on the open sea by the Royal Navy and British support for the native uprisings. Since the US saw little chance of defeating the Royal Navy, they opted for a full-blown invasion of Canada. There's some speculation that they might have even tried to annex their northern neighbor, but this would have been hardly feasible for them at this point in time. Despite the name, the war actually lasted into 1814 and was officially ended in 1815, the conclusion being indecisive. The US failed to gain more territory in the north, though the position of Spain was weakened in the New World, which later allowed the US to absorb territories in the south. Over the course of the next decades, the US would follow their manifest destiny and expand westwards towards the Pacific. This would however create new tensions with Canada as the Oregon Territory pushed towards what would soon be known as British Columbia. This Oregon question soon became a hot topic in American politics, with the Democratic Party even suggesting to annex the British-controlled area to put an end to the border dispute. However, as a similar dispute with Mexico resulted in a war against this neighbor, plans to fight Canada for their Pacific coastline were dropped to avoid a war on two fronts. Instead, a border commission was set up, comprised of both British and American representatives, that drew borders that were acceptable to both parties. However, even then some ambiguities remained, especially around the San Juan Islands. As both sides laid claim to these islands, both sent settlers to populate them. For the British, they mostly wanted pastures for herds, while the Americans used them as farmland. And this is where the pig finally comes into play. Kept you waiting on that one. June 15th, 1859. A pig is digging through Farmer Lyman Cutler's garden again. Again! Enough! He might have yelled as he grabbed his rifle and shot the pig. This was no wild hog, however. The animal belonged to Irish-born pig herder Charles Griffin. When Griffin learned of the demise of his pig, he demanded compensation. Cutler knew he might lose the legal dispute and offered $10 as damages. If my calculations are not off, that is around $400 adjusted for inflation around the time of writing of this script. Griffin, however, was not satisfied with this amount. Some sources claim he demanded 10 times the amount. No matter his asking price, Cutler refused to pay it. In turn, Griffin reported the incident to the local British authorities, who then threatened to arrest Cutler. The farmer in turn sought protection by the US authorities and found support for his plight from General William S. Harney, who was reportedly staunchly anti-British. The army officer quickly assembled 66 infantrymen and sent them to protect the American farmers on San Juan Island. This amassing of troops in turn forced the governor of British Columbia, James Douglas, to send troops of his own, which he did in form of 3 warships. Despite being outnumbered, the 9th Infantry refused to retreat. Seeing this, the governor ordered an invasion. Fortunately, this never happened, as Admiral Robert L. Baines, who was in charge of the British Pacific Navy, refused to, quote, involve 2 great nations in a war over a squabble about a pig. Remember when I said that the War of 1812 is a misnomer? This one is too. Despite the name Pig War, a war was actually averted due to Bain's rational actions. While Governor Douglas was unhappy about this, his superiors in London actually agreed with the admiral. Likewise, Washington was shocked to hear that another war almost broke out over an escalated fight over one pig and a few eaten potatoes. Of course, the true source of the problem was the unclear border, so once again American and British politicians sat down and discussed ownership of the islands. Interestingly, they still couldn't come to an agreement, even after years of diplomatic back and forth. In the end, a neutral third party was invited to settle the dispute, and it was none other than the Kaiser of the newly formed German Empire. Though Wilhelm I didn't actually decide this himself, rather he created a committee that settled the dispute for him. The result was total control of the San Juan Islands for the United States, as the border of British Columbia would start in the Haro Strait just west of San Juan. Throughout the history of man, a lot of wars were started for a very little reason, so on a personal note, I am glad that at least this one instance of bloodshed could be avoided. If you are interested in similar events that led to wars, I can assure you we will get to them in future episodes. As for today, we have reached the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed this tale. If you did, please consider leaving a like, a comment, and if you're not done so yet, subscribe. Many thanks to my wonderful artist and to you viewers. Until next time, bye! Suggesting to an annex, yes.